I'm ready.
All right. Hey, everybody. Jay Smith here with another FishPod Network podcast here with Paul Fleming, my partner in FishPod TV. And, I've had you sit next to me this whole time here with all this information. You had such great stories that we were talking about when we were on the road one time. Paul has done a lot in his lifetime, lived a pretty exciting life. And at one of those points in his life, he raced boats. I'm getting shorter by the second.
You are getting shorter by the second.
There we go.
Yeah, we used to.
You used to race boats.
We used to do a lot of. I got real big into mechanics.
Now these are the big hydroplane looking things, or
no,
what were the power boats?
They were all power boats.
Yeah.
They're all gas driven motors and stuff like that. I started out doing mechanics and stuff like that.
I'm done with this chair. Keep
going. You all right?
Yeah, it keeps making me go like I'm a midget, so I'm good.
All right. So I got into doing mechanics, and I worked down in Miami for a company called Fort Apache Marina, and I got into rebuilding 1,350, 1,400 horsepower motors.
That's a lot of horses.
Yeah, a lot of horses. We even went up to some of the 1,500 horsepower Keith Eicherts. We've done all kinds of poker run races and all kinds of stuff. But
so, about when was that for you? And how old were you when you walked into that?
I was probably my early 20s.
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah, still in your crazy stage.
Still in my crazy stage. It was one of those things. Anything fast enough for me to do something stupid in. Yeah, I was all for it.
When you were telling me the stories,
all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I've done some some poker runs with a couple buddies of mine, and
for people that don't know what a poker run is, explain that.
Poker run is it's kind of a.
I don't know what a poker run is.
It's a boat race. Most high performance clubs and stuff will do them, and basically they've got 5 different stops. You'll start in Miami, and you'll pick up a card. They literally hand you. I got one of those long reach poles with a playing card on it, and you pick that card up and you stuff it in the glove box, and it's a boat race to the next location, and you'll go down to Key Largo, and then you get a card there, and then you go down to Marathon, and then you hit like 5 different places.
And it's just timed during that run, and then you stop, or is it just you hit your card and then you keep going?
Yeah, you hit your card and you keep going.
Oh, okay, I get it.
And at the end, whoever has the best poker hand wins.
Gotcha.
It's not so much how fast your boat is, but by what your poker hand is.
That's so random.
It is. It's funny. It's actually kind of fun. But I will share one ultimate thrill experience that I had doing a poker run. We did a poker run over to Freeport, and one of my customers had a 36 Nortec with twin 1,350 horsepower blow motors, 136, 140 mile an hour boat all day long. So we're hitting our stops. Last stop is Freeport. So we run over to Freeport, and we obviously didn't have the winning poker hand, unfortunately. And the whole group decided to come back to the States. And this customer goes, he says, I'd love to go hang out at the Bimini Big Game Club. So we decided to go over and run from Freeport to Bimini. And we stayed the night. Well, the next morning we got up, and the wind was blowing so bad that there was no way we were making the run across. For anybody who's run a catamaran, they're not so good in rough water.
Oh, okay.
V-bottom boats cut through the waves. When you get a sideways wave, that catamaran, you get that top of that wave will wash in between the pontoons, and it becomes a little difficult to drive.
Okay.
Now, when you've got a boat that does 140 miles an hour, that's definitely not... that's definitely
not optimal.
No. So we got stuck in Bimini for 2 days. And so, again, we just did a podcast looking at weather reports and everything else. So I look at the reports, and I'm going, okay, it's really good first thing in the morning, but it's going to get really nasty by like 7, 8 o'clock. So we need to get up and we need to get moving early. Well, the Bimini Big Game Club is in a small protected basin, and it's a U-shaped place on the island. All the boats are in the middle. So everything echoes. Our boat is backed into the slip up against the seawall. So if you've ever been to a boat race, if you've ever heard a 1,350 horsepower supercharged motor,
so crazy.
These things will vibrate paintings off the wall. So we get everything untied, and I fired both motors up, put them in gear, and kept going. I'm sure that everybody knew that we left.
Yeah. Well, there goes Paul.
It was somewhere in the vicinity of about 4:45 in the morning when we pushed the dock.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people weren't very happy.
Yeah, I'm
with
sure
us.
they were not happy with you at all.
The good thing about it is over the Bimini Big Game Club, most of them are fishermen, so a lot of those guys were already getting up. So we leave out of Bimini Channel at 5 o'clock-ish, 5:15. Well, we wear headphones or headsets with microphones on them so that we can communicate between each other. So I'm on the controls.
And you pretty much have to do that because of how loud it is.
Yeah, it's just there's no way. I
Yeah.
mean, we're in an open canopy,
Sure.
so it gets real
You're
loud
not
and
gonna
windy.
hear
You're not going to
anything.
hear anything, and they're noise canceling mics and everything else. Well, as the captain of the boat, and you're in the captain's station, there's a switch that has a toggle to talk to just your crew, or if you flip up, it puts you into the VHF radio and the crew so that you can monitor your VHF channels. So it's early in the morning, and I've got my thing voxed down to talk to the guys. And we're going out Bimini the Bimini Channel. We roll the throttles up. Now, mind you, there's no, probably not the smartest thing to do coming out of Bimini, but it was pitch black dark, no radar, no nothing. We just had our nav lights going, and we pushed it up on a plane and hit speeds of about 112 miles an hour in the middle, in the dark, trying to make up some time so we can get through this weather. Figuring and hoping that there was nothing in front of us because we didn't have a radar running.
Right.
So just as it starts to get light, I kind of see this funky thing happen with the water in front of me. And it kind of just danced in front of me. And it was just kind of very confusing. And it happened again. So I start to pull the throttles back a little bit. And next thing you know, the water just explodes in front of me. So now I chop the throttles. I come all the way back down into neutral. And as I pull it into neutral, I'm looking down at the throttles, and I notice that I'm on Vox only. I flipped that switch up, and my headset was ringing with the United States Customs screaming at me. They had a helicopter that flew over our head lobbing 50 caliber machine gun fire in front of the boat because we came out of the Bahamas
Sure.
in pitch black
Looks
of
bad.
darkness
It
at
looks bad.
112 miles an hour. And as the light would start to come up, I'm pushing throttles forward. And I think at that particular time, we were probably tipping speeds of about 130 miles an hour.
Right.
And that was definitely interesting.
So, what are the first words said to you as they come up to the boat?
They actually didn't come up to the boat at first because the boats were still tracking. But one guy did come out of the helicopter from a rope onto the front deck of the boat, and he was not a happy camper.
What did he say?
I don't remember what he said, but it was not nice.
No.
It was probably not radio or TV worthy.
That's
he
hilarious.
was definitely not happy with me. And
So they thought you were running drugs.
they thought I was running drugs,
Yeah.
and obviously we weren't. And luckily enough, at the time where I was working, we used to do a lot of maintenance work on the customs boats.
Sure,
So eventually somebody I knew came out there,
Right.
and it was kind of, oh geez, it's you, Paul. Gee, I
All
figured.
right, guys, wrap it up.
That's it. So it was, but that was definitely an adrenaline rush for me. You want to talk about a pucker factor?
Yeah.
When someone starts lobbing 50 caliber rounds in front of your
That's
boat.
so insane you couldn't hear it because that's loud too. That is not.
Yeah, you couldn't hear that over these motors. That's
That
for
is
sure.
insane.
When you're sitting there in the open cockpit, you've got literally the hood scoops where the blowers are at.
Mm-hmm.
So all you can hear, if you can hear the motors at all, is just nothing but air getting sucked into the blowers.
Okay. All right. Well, you've told me a few stories about this stuff. Could you explain to me how it works on a team in the race boat? Because you had 2 or 3
Yeah,
people.
you're generally your race boats are going to have 3 people. You're going to have a navigator, a throttle man, and a wheelman.
Okay.
So your navigator is going to be responsible for the well-being of the boat. They're keeping track of who's around you. For the most part, nowadays, especially nowadays, they've got GPS tracking in all the boats, so they're able to
They know where everybody is.
And they can keep track of them on the
Generally.
electronics of the
Right.
of the boat. But you're generally that navigator's job is to communicate to the throttle man and the pilot of what's around them and what their surroundings are, so they are able to make their moves. Oddly enough, the wheelman has very little control over the boat at all. It's kind of interesting, but
He's there for show, kind of, or what?
well, he helps
He does
guide the boat.
princess wave as you go by the thing.
He helps guide the boat in the direction that it needs to go, but the throttle man will actually push an outboard engine further up in the throttle going into a turn and pull that inboard motor back, and will actually keep the momentum going, and that actually in turn actually steers the boat. When you're running a straight line, the steering doesn't do much because you're just launching out of the water so much that you're using propulsion to actually keep yourself in a straight line.
Sure.
When and again, being able to read those waves is an interesting thing.
Is that part of his job? He has to convey stuff to the throttle guy, or is that?
Well, the navigators is who's telling everybody where everything's at. The throttle man just needs to have the knowledge of how to
Work the engine.
work the engines and how to read the waves, because go to YouTube and search boat race stuffs. You can literally come up out of a wave, and if you don't propulsion out the right way, you can put yourself nose into
Just
a
stuff
wave.
it into a wave, yeah. I've seen some hellacious wrecks.
Oh man, there has been some serious.
That's actually one of my questions: is how dangerous is it?
It's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
Now they've made, especially in today's racing, they've made a lot more safety regulations and safety rules to help out. The closed cockpit guys have to go through a training on how to get in and out of their boat if it turns over. I had the pleasure last year at the Sarasota boat races to take my team boat out there, and we housed 2 divers, rescue divers on the boat. And we literally sat in the track on turn 3 in case a boat went in and wrecked out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an interesting
neat.
perspective to be on the other side.
Yeah, right.
But it was now I'll tell you, want to know the guys that are nuts is the jet ski racers.
Oh, you think? Yeah, they are pretty. They're moving pretty good there. In
Well,
those
I mean,
things.
these high performance jet skis that they're running. This last race that I was at, I mean, they're running 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, and you're in a jet. You're in a sit down jet ski.
Yeah.
And we were getting ready to go. We were getting ready to push out to the track because the bigger boats were coming out, and we had a rescue boat that came in with a guy who was completely dislocated shoulder. Stuffed his ski.
I'm sure hitting at 80 miles an hour is like just slamming into a wall. Pretty
much.
It is
for sure.
Just because the wrecks I've seen, I've watched some of those races before, and it seems like those guys they skip across the water a bit before they finally.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, anytime you're racing, I don't care if it's motorcycle racing, automotive racing, boat racing. I mean, there's a high risk of danger, or high level of danger, and a high risk of injury. So you just have to have you have to have a lot of nerve. A few screws loose.
Yeah, definitely. And
for sure. But there's a lot of skill and technique that goes into it for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. So my next question would be, what is the most scared you've been in racing? Did you ever have any times that went south on you?
They've all had.
You're one of the lucky ones.
They've all had their puckers, but luckily I've never had a major issue.
All right,
so
well,
I'm still here, so that's a good thing.
That's good.
But yeah.
Okay. What?
Now,
entry. Oh, go ahead.
I will tell you, my biggest pucker factor was I got to take a ride in a boat called the Mystic. Well, it was actually a Mystic, 50-foot catamaran with twin T53 GE turbines in it.
I'm nodding my head like I know, but I don't.
Fastest
know what that
I've ever been on the water. This boat actually, when it was done, it was a brand new boat. They were taking it out for test trials and stuff like that. I happened to know the guy from Turbine Marine, and he got me out there to go for a boat ride. And it was the second time the boat had ever been in the water. And they had done their preliminary stuff with the engines. This time they were going to go do a wide open. So I'm inside this cab, and I'm watching.
Is this just a ride along, or did you have something to do with this boat?
No, it was just a ride along. And so I'm sitting in the back row of this cockpit, fully enclosed, looking at this GPS on the center, and you sound like you're in a fighter jet. I mean, these things are pre-ignitioned up, and then they start to bring the throttle into it, and literally getting up on a plane actually took a little time because it takes a lot to get these boats up and going because of the types of propellers that they're using. But once we were up and moving, I literally watched this thing go from 60 miles an hour to about 140 in 2 seconds. I mean, it was just instantaneous. My head was pinned to the wall, and it was crazy. We're going across Biscayne Bay, and as I'm looking at it, it's literally. I mean, we went from 160 to, or from 60 miles an hour to like 110 to 130 to 170 to 180,
Just like that.
and it's just these things just climbing. We ended up hitting 205 miles an hour.
Man.
And at 205 miles an hour, there is not much of that boat that's in the water, and you could feel it starting to chine walk. And right there is when I had my, you know. And I'll tell anybody I don't do long car rides, I don't do roller coasters and everything else because I'm a control freak. If I'm not in control of that vessel, I get edgy, I get freaky, and that was the most uncomfortable feeling ever.
I bet that's definitely pucker worthy.
I mean, and now
I'm like that too. I'm picky about who I go out in a boat with.
You know, I mean, listen, I've gone out of Hollover Inlet in Miami when it was 6 footers, 7 footers out there wide open through the jetties and launched a boat 12 to 14 foot out of the water.
Right.
No problem with that. As long as I'm holding that steering wheel and I have some sort of control, I'm okay with it. But yeah, now you start doing that with me being a passenger.
I'm with that. I'm like that just driving. Like I don't
Well,
like
that's what I'm
riding
saying.
with other people.
I'm
I'd
the
rather
same thing.
drive.
I
make other people nervous,
okay.
but-
I'm okay riding around town. I can do that, little short bursts here and there.
Get on the highway though. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. That's a stressful thing for me. What like an entry level to get into that kind of boat racing? What kind of cash are we talking
Big
about?
money.
That's a big money sport.
That's a big money. That's either you have way too much money that you don't know what to do with, or it's definitely a sponsor-driven tournament, sponsor-driven sport for sure.
Is that what happens a lot? Is people own the boat and then they get people like you to run it? Is that what?
There's a
kind
lot of
part
people
the
that'll do
thing?
that. Yeah, there's a lot of people that just love the thrill of that racing, but don't either don't have the nerve or they're just not interested in driving it, but they want to be a part of it.
Kind of you think it's kind of a small niche group of people doing this?
It is. It's definitely, and as the years have gone, it's actually gotten smaller and tighter. The whole offshore powerboat racing circuit has gotten so small. It's not what it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. So does this knowledge of this part of your past, does that affect you getting jobs with like your job you have now with Intrepid? Do they look at that and go, I don't know, man?
Well, actually, the COO of Intrepid is actually a former racer as well. He was a throttle man.
So it helped you in that instance.
Yeah, it was just,
I was just sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, man, I don't know, man, because I hire and fire people for my business. I'll be sitting there like, that's pretty risky, man. I don't know about this guy, man.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten the reputation at work if it's blowing and it's nasty.
Send Paul.
Paul will take it out.
Paul likes it.
Yeah, Paul will take it out.
You're Mikey, like from the Life commercial. Mike will eat it.
Yeah, that's it. Just give it to Paul. He'll take it out there.
All right, we'll close this out. Then we're going to keep this one a little short here. What happens? And I'm sure this has happened. You get out there, nature calls. You're stuck in this boat. There's no getting out of it.
You know your adrenaline's running so good that
Clenched up.
You're clenched up.
You're puckered up tight enough to keep it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. That was I was thinking about. I was like, oh my god, that would be the worst.
Yeah.
You're out there, and the next thing you know, every wave.
You know, it's one of those things. You know, it's the same. You know, it's the same thing with anything. You get concentrating into doing something. Your mind focuses on what your task is.
Just don't drink any Starbucks before you go out in the boat.
Yeah, yeah, coffee and stuff like that's
Probably doesn't mix well.
That's not. Yeah, you don't do that before a race.
Sorry, I had to take it lowbrow in the end there.
That's all right. It's all good.
All right, everybody, we're going to be doing more and more podcasts. I have a bunch of guests coming up. We have iCast coming up soon too.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
And I'm going out a couple days. Paul's going out for a day. Paul's going to the East Coast, going to film some stuff out there, rigging up a boat, and
that's actually next weekend. I got my weekend screwed up, so that's actually next weekend.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay,
go do that.
Cool. So, anyways, we got a bunch of new content coming up. Make sure you go to fishpodnetwork.com and check out all this stuff. These podcasts will also be in audio form. You can find them on Google Play, Stitcher, and iTunes. Make sure you give us a subscribe and a like, and share with your friends. Let them know we're out there. We appreciate you guys checking it out, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you.